A pleasant day to each and every one of us. I am James Trillasola from BSN English, and together with my co-discussants, Mr. Sheridan Bachansila and Ms. Trashime Palateo, we will be discussing the pedagogical competencies of teachers. Now, when we talk about pedagogical competency, it refers to the knowledge, the skills, and abilities that educators possess to effectively design, implement, and assess teaching and learning activities. So these competencies are essential in facilitating meaningful and successful educational experience for students, and it encompasses a range of skills and attributes which includes subject matter knowledge or the ability to effectively teach the subject matter, and of course the instructional design or the materials that will be used in teaching and learning process, and of course the teaching strategies and the classroom management. And in this lesson, we'll be discussing important concepts for us to become an effective future educator and for us to effectively teach our future learners. Now, the intended learning outcome of this lesson is to construct a reflection grid as concrete evidence of one's understanding of the pedagogical competencies of teachers. Now, let's first define what pedagogy is. According to the textbook, it is a study of teaching methods, including the aims of education and ways in which goals may be achieved. In simpler terms, it is a way in which teacher teaches and helps students to learn. Of course, the goal of this is to provide a quality education among learners. Another definition of a pedagogy is it is a more subjective perspective, which requires demonstrating um, one's philosophy, attitude, and styles. Given that we have these different teachers having these different personalities, of course, if we are going to put into perspective into a classroom setting, they also have this different philosophies in teaching, or different approaches. They have this different attitudes and the way they handle their students, and as well as their styles. Now, even though they have this different philosophy, attitude, and styles, which greatly affects the learning of the students, these teachers only have one goal, and that is to teach effectively and to provide a quality education to their learners or to the students, because students deserve to have this quality education, assuring that these qualified teachers has or have the great skills in teaching. They have the knowledge and the subject matter. They can effectively teach and embodies or they can effectively embody the knowledge to their students. Another point being highlighted here is pedagogy, defined as creativity in action and seemingly bordering on emotions to further motivate the learners. I just want to reiterate this one because when we are going to teach our students, we don't just focus on providing them the theoretical perspective of the subject matter or the topic. Because if we just give them the theoretical perspective or the facade of the topic, then they will just learn on the surface level. However, as teachers, we have to dig deeper into fostering a better understanding on what does it really implies or what does the topic really talks about, and of course to build this interpersonal relationship or building these connections among our students. We don't just give them the topic and some important points. However, we also have to provide authentic activity or authentic materials. We have to utilize those authentic materials and provide them intrinsically motivating activities that will encourage them to learn more, to dig deeper into some of the concepts, the important concepts that are not just applicable inside the classroom setting, but of course applicable in the real life context. I have one question here. Why is the profession of teaching not a distant entity from pedagogy? Or why is profession of teaching related to pedagogy? Or what are the relationships? So we already have defined what pedagogy is. And of course, it is really connected to the profession of teaching in the way that pedagogy talks about the methods, the strategies, and the techniques that the teacher employs in the teaching and learning process So meaning to say that pedagogy is being applied, or the concept of pedagogy is being applied in the process of teaching and learning for the teachers to effectively teach to the learners. We also have an answer here in a textbook, which states that it is because the teacher is a professional who is imbued with the four pillars of learning. If you remember the four pillars of learning, those were learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, and learning to be. Yeah, and has a thorough understanding that teaching is a mission, vocation, and a noble profession. So, we teachers are our job is to serve our country and to provide the quality education among learners. That's why we are calibrated with the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities. Now, thus, every teacher must be in control of the events occurring inside the classroom and even beyond it confines, especially in the community, so that his or her pedagogical skills must benefit both the learners and the community. It was being highlighted here that the role of the teacher doesn't only limit inside the classroom. However, the teacher do have a role outside the classroom context or inside or within the community. So teachers have the great role or the great duty, responsibilities within the whole society. That's why we are empowered enough to teach our learners and to embody them, not just the learning, but of course the concept of the moral values that can be applied in the or in the wider perspective. Now, shown in the presentation is the diagram of the components of the pedagogical competencies of the teacher or of a teacher. And if you take a look on the image, we have in the middle or in the middle of the circle, we have the pedagogical competencies, and it was being surrounded by four circles. First, we have the purpose, then next is the content, and then the communication skills, and then the professional development, and it's a cycle as you can observe. Now, first we have the purpose. Of course, everything would start with a purpose. What is the purpose why we want to teach this? What is the purpose why we want to embody knowledge to our learners? And what is the purpose why we are using this, or why we apply this techniques or everything? So everything would start within a purpose, and then of course the content, or what we are trying to give to our learners, what we're trying to teach to them, or what are the important points that our learners should learn. And then we will be using our communication skills as we engage with our learners, and then of course that will help us to grow professionally. That's just a gist of it, because I'll be focusing only on the purpose, and the content, the communication skills, and the professional development will be further discussed by my co-discussants. Now, let's first focus on the benefit of the components of the pedagogical competencies of the teacher. Well, it helps us to understand how teachers should develop their teaching to bring out the best to their learners. So meaning to say, or in a spectrum, this components of pedagogical competencies of a teacher is a framework or a guide for the teachers in the teaching and learning process. Now let's talk about the purposes of the components of the pedagogical competencies of a teacher. Now first, we have deliver lessons that are planned, organized, and implemented based on the objectives that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bounded. So we are very familiar with this since we are future educators, because it was being introduced to us when we are going to make a lesson plan. As what you've noticed, when we are going to make a lesson plan, it should follow the SMART, which talks about it's about the specificity, the measurability, of course, and the attainability, relevance, and the time boundedness of our lesson plan or of our topic. Now, when we are going to deliver lesson, of course, it should be well organized. It should be well planned, then organized, and of course, we implement it through or basing on the objectives. Because if we give this, or if we provide them the exact way of teaching, then the teaching or learning process will be very effective, assuring that students really learn from our discussion. Another is to provide a room for learners to make their own personal and independent connection from the classroom to real life situations, and that was from Serrano of 2015. That's what I've mentioned a while ago in our recent presentation, since it's all about learning within the classroom and connecting it to real life context. If we just learn within the classroom and not solely realizing the importance of it in the actual setting, then that's actually useless. So we have to provide them. That's why I mentioned earlier that we have to provide them activities that are intrinsically motivating, that will help them to grow, to develop their personal connections, and of course their interrelationship among teachers, students, and then students to other students, and how they collaborate with each other, and how they form this learning within the classroom, how they going to transform it or apply it into a real life context. That's the purpose of education. We teach them how to live and not just to learn. Oh, it was being reiterated in the textbook that as young teachers, we must develop the confidence as we prepare in the teaching profession, and be very vigilant enough in integrating the very fundamental legal basis of education in the Philippines that are emphasized in the Article 14 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So the following points that I will be discussing today, stipulated in our Constitution, are indicated herein so it can steer future teachers in aligning them to the lesson objectives they may be formulating. So it is very useful for us to consider these things in making objectives in our discussions. The first here is the right of citizens to quality education at all levels. So we are aware with this and very familiar since it was being discussed already in our recent courses, wherein every citizen has the right to access quality education regardless of what level it is. Could be primary, secondary, or tertiary. Everyone has the right to have the quality education, and that's why it's our duty as future educators or teachers to provide them the quality education that everyone deserves. Now, second is the provision of a complete, adequate, and integrated system education. So, the provision of a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education, it refers to the establishment and maintenance of a comprehensive educational framework that addresses various aspects of learning and development. And it generally implies the three. For example, the complete education. This aspect involves ensuring that students receive education across a broad range of subjects and skills. So it goes beyond just academic knowledge, and maybe include in the development of social, emotional, and practical skills. So, meaning to say that a complete education aims to prepare individuals for various aspects of life, both personally and professionally. Now, another here is we have the adequate education. So, adequate education implies that the system provides a sufficient and satisfactory level of learning opportunities. So, this includes having qualified teachers, appropriate learning resources, and facilities to support teaching and learning process. Now, adequacy also extend to addressing the diverse needs of learners or the students, accommodating the different learning styles and, of course, their abilities. And when we talk about integrated education, it refers to the seamless connection of different aspects of learning. So it involves breaking down traditional subjects boundaries and incorporating interdisciplinary approaches. Integrated education aims to show students the connection between different areas of knowledge and how they relate to real world situations. Next, we have here the inclusion of the study of the Constitution in the curriculum, which refers to incorporating the examination and understanding of a country's constitution as a part of the educational content provided to the students. So, this typically involves including lessons or courses that focus on constitutional principles, the structure of government, legal rights, and the overall framework that guides the functioning of the nation. Example for this are the understanding government structure, legal and civic education, then democratic values, citizenship education, and among others. And then another one is education.
on the inculcation of nationalism and patriotism. Now, it means that the educational system should actively promote and instill a sense of loyalty, pride, and love for one's nation among students. So, this emphasis is placed on the developing of a strong national identity and the commitment to the well being and the values. And the next one is the enjoyment of academic freedom to teachers, students, institutions, and all institutions of higher education. So everyone deserves to have this academic freedom wherein for the students, everyone has the right to explore and of course to discover more about everything when it comes to the educational aspect. And for the teachers, they have the opportunity to further elaborate the research. Filipino as a national language, Filipino and English as official languages for use in communication and instruction. Well, of course, it is very prevalent nowadays that we are we are someone who keep on using these languages as a medium of instruction, and it is very helpful for us because we are balancing two languages. For example, Filipinos, if we use this language, we are somewhat like preserving our identity. And if we also use English, we have to balance because, of course, we are accommodating into a dominant language. So when we use English, because it is a means of instruction and we have to use this because it's the international language. So we have to strike a balance between the two. And then the promotion of science and technology as we evolve nowadays, or as our society evolves, we are uh, really utilizing the utilizing technology, and it's very important to promote these concepts or to promote this aspect because it will help us to grow as a society and to develop more. And then the preservation of the enrichment of Filipino culture, we also have to preserve our culture and we have to enrich those cultural, we have to enrich our culture through celebrating cultural activities and, of course, still not putting those traditional beliefs behind. And then the promotion of physical education and other related programs. So we also have to enrich our physical education because there are lots and lots of benefits that we can get in this. So I guess I already did my part discussing the purpose of the pedagogical competencies of the teacher. Now I will give the floor to my co-discussants, hoping that you have learned something from my discussion. Thank you.